hi, ladies, 317. Welcome to our conversation. Freedom Talks, thanks for being here and tuning in. I'm excited. I think Chris has told everybody who I am. I'm Talia Black. I'm her therapist, but I'm not supposed to say that because that's client confidentiality, but we got it. But anyway, Chris asked me to come. I am a marriage and family therapist, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. I don't exactly know how I grew up to be that because I definitely didn't want to grow up to be a therapist. But it's actually been kind of cool. So I specialize in trauma and addiction. I specialize in family systems, which I'm sure you guys all come from super healthy, regulated, wonderful families with zero issues, right? Yeah, me too. Okay, cool, me too. So part of what Chris had kind of asked me to come talk about was trauma, its impact, kind of how it works, and how to fight it. But I'm pretty casual in my conversations. I like interaction. So if you just stare at me, then I'm like, I don't think this is going well, Talia. You should stop talking. And I'm like, okay, no. So like head nods are good. If you like, yeah, that connects with me, I got it. Like, yeah, that definitely hits home for me. I think we're gonna leave place for questions at the end, so that if anybody has questions, I'll see if I can answer them. I don't know, but I'll tell you, I don't know that. So I'll hook you up with a therapist that does. But so think about questions if your head gets going, and we'll kind of be talking about that. But anyway, so I started in grad school thinking I'm going to go be a therapist. I don't know why. Probably because I had my own healing to deal with, but I was just going to help other people, right? But then when you get in the process, you're like, oh, I really have some stuff I need to work through. That's me. That's my family. I don't love that. And that was the first place I realized, like, oh, I'm the black sheep of the family. And I'm guessing that somebody else in here probably feels that way too. There's a lot of black sheeps that tend to, they get wayward, right? But as I started studying and I got more into like the addiction realm and understanding what's happening in this process, I realized there's a lot of black sheepness. And when you pay attention to family system dynamics, there's like the hero child that's, you know, the great one that can't do anything wrong, the golden one. Then you got like the clown who's funny and brings a lot of humor, right? But then you got the black sheep, that's the problem child, that they always got drama going on, or the parents are always on them, right? But what you'll come to understand when you start looking at families over and over and over again is that the black sheep is actually the only one in the family that actually knows what's going on. Have you guys heard that? Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's 100% true. I'm not just saying that like, I'm a black sheep and make myself feel better. It is true. The black sheep has a hard time wrestling with what might be happening in a family system. Most of the time it's avoidance. We don't know how to talk about hard things. Nobody's teaching us how to verbalize emotions, and no one's validating a painful process for us. Yeah, hey, that wasn't okay that happened to you. No one's really saying that. We don't know how to do that. It's uncomfortable, and so we end up just kind of going through life without a language around emotions. And when we do that for so long and we don't know how to process anything that's coming up, we end up rebelling against a system. And what it looks like is pushing out through behavior. And so anytime you have that, it's kind of like the smoke to the fire. You're like, if you've got rebellion, there is smoke to a bigger fire. So it's not a bad thing. People need to stop like shaming black sheep. You need to bring them into the therapy room and be like, hello, you're the expert of this family. I want your opinion on what's going on, right? And giving space and emotional regulation and some kind of the definitions of what emotions are. If you can give that to a family, you're gonna get health that comes from that, but it usually comes from the black sheep. So you guys do a lot of learning and classwork, right? How much do we know about trauma? That it's a thing? A little bit? People talk about it on TikTok a lot. I'm traumatized, right? Yeah, okay, well. It's a buzzword. Triggered is a buzzword, right? And I think we need to reclaim what those things mean because they are very useful. But I think society, in an attempt to try to understand, has kind of lost meaning of what really happens in the trauma process. So there are different types of trauma, you guys can imagine. There's really like 3 different types of trauma. First type is what we call, have you guys heard of different types of trauma, maybe a little bit? Okay, let's go. First type of trauma is called a big T trauma. Anybody hear about that? Big T trauma is like the trauma that we expect to hear about. So your brother fought in Afghanistan. He hand-to-hand combat, was shot. That's significant, right? There was sexual assault. Somebody lost a baby. There was a car accident. Cancer was diagnosed. I call them like casserole traumas because somebody from the church is going to show up with a casserole. Sorry for your loss. right? These are the ones that no one's gonna doubt something has happened. You don't have to question it, you don't have to explain it. They're like, yeah, that's bad, right? They're the most obvious that you're gonna have. Second type of trauma is what I like to call a toothpick trauma, a little t trauma. These are the things that create pain, but are not super obvious. So if somebody stabs a toothpick in your leg, right, there's gonna be pain, but you're probably not gonna die. And it's easy after a couple of weeks to be like, it's just a bruise, right? It's not that big of a deal. Other people have that. These are gonna be things like losing a job that you always wanted, right? These are gonna be things like not making it into the school that you wanted to get into. These are things that you couldn't provide a certain experience for your kids that you always really wanted to provide, right? No one's gonna be like, oh yeah, that's significant, but it hurts enough, right? And when you get 10 toothpick traumas and 20 toothpick traumas, 100 toothpick traumas, we end up having the potential of bleeding out, right? And these are the ones that society a lot of times they don't pay attention to because they are so little, but if you have a lot of toothpick traumas, little things that affected you and you didn't really know what to do with, that can really add up. And it actually can become more problematic than one's big single, like big T chronic trauma, the casserole trauma that happens, right? So those are really important to pay attention to when you're walking through your story and you're like, what kind of trauma do I have? If it's like, well, that wasn't that big of a deal, or some people had it worse, that's probably a toothpick trauma that we need to pay attention to and kind of look at. Third type of trauma is chronic trauma. This is kind of like a fog that comes down over a city and just kind of hangs there, right? You can see it, but you can't catch it. This is if your dad's an alcoholic, has been for your entire life, and you know exactly what his footsteps sound like when he comes down the hall, and if it's a good day or a bad day, right? Your body knows that something's up, and no one ever has to say a word, right? It's your mom's been into the pills again, or she's lost her job and won't tell anybody, and as a kid, you're like, ooh, I feel something in the atmosphere. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? So your body knows what's going on around us far quicker than our brain does. And so you get those like spidey senses that happen, and you're like, I don't know what's happening in this room, but something's happening here. That comes from recognizing situations around us that we don't know how to put words to, that we may not be able to change. We feel stuck in them, right? It's, I'm stuck with an ADD, right? I don't know how to change this. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to do something different, but people keep telling me I need to. Well, I'm stuck, right? This kind of chronic overlay that hangs over a situation. And again, you can't really touch it. It's got problems, but it's hard to really like nail down. Those are the three types of trauma you want to kind of pay attention to: the big T, the little t, and the chronic. Why is it important to understand trauma? Trauma creates reactions, right? Have you ever been in a situation where you're having a conversation with somebody and they react really big and you're like, are you talking to me? What is wrong with you? Why is this reaction so big? What is hysterical is often historical, right? And if you've been in a situation, I know I have, where I've reacted really big and I'm like, why do I feel like this? That was not that big of a deal, but I feel it in my body. It's usually your body telling you, oh, we've been here before, sister. This experience, the way you feel, this helplessness, yeah, hello, we've done this before. But it doesn't come to us when we wake up one morning and be like, oh, I have felt helpless in my life. I felt very alone and isolated. No one was there to care for me. Oh, yeah, thank you for that understanding. It comes through reactions. It comes through being agitated, defensive, fighting. It comes through avoidance. It comes through forgetting what I was saying and just kind of dissociating out, right? And it's not important to really work through trauma unless you want to be able to regulate consistently with the people around you. You want to be present. You want to be able to talk to your kids and feel present with them. You don't want them to feel your anxiety, right? So if you've got to understand your story. You have to understand the pieces of the things that have happened so that you can regulate your experience with other people. You're not living in this hyper-vigilant state of waiting for the next shoe to drop. Does anybody ever feel that way? You're waiting for the pin, you're waiting for something to happen. It's kind of this idea of like foreboding joy. Like, yeah, this is good, I'm doing really well, I've been clean, like everything's going well, but like, I don't know. That's a really hard place to live. It's still a trauma state because you're waiting. And so to have a fully restful spirit, be like, okay, I can kind of be a piece of this, usually involves going through and recognizing where does my reactivity come from, which means we have to dig a little bit, which is why people come to my office and they're like, I don't know why I'm acting this way. And I'm like, probably because you're not crazy and you have a reason, let's go find it, which is not a fun process, but it is the ability, that's what gives us freedom. Gives us the ability to control what's happening to us because we can name the experience that's happening inside of us and how it's affecting the relationships around us, right? So the interesting thing, this is how God is the only creator, right? Nothing else can create. Satan can manipulate and he can destroy, but he doesn't have the power to create, right? So that is the name of the game with Satan when it comes to trauma, is he's going to take a situation in your life that happened to you, right? And he is going to recycle it over and over and over and over again. I'll tell you how this happens. Every time you have a traumatic situation happen to you, right, it leaves us with a shame message about who we are. You get kicked out of school, right? You don't like the traditional schooling, you have a hard time in classes, your teachers think you're bad and you won't sit still, or that you're, dumb and you're not paying attention, and you have this whole struggle with academics, right? You have a whole struggle with teachers and how to regulate at school. All of a sudden, there's this shame message stuck to our kind of personhood about being stupid or being incapable. No teacher sat down and was like, Talia, you're dumb. Right? No one said those words, but through the experiences that we have, we end up collecting this kind of cognition, this negative thinking about ourselves that's like, I don't know how to make sense of what's happening to me. It's got to be that I'm dumb. It's got to be that I'm stupid, right? And unless someone's able to kind of help us go, hey, this school is terrible. Your teacher was super rude. Your way of processing and being educated is different. Let's figure out what works. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and then what happens to that shame message just gets integrated into our person. So we end up putting this lens on that we look at the entire world, and it's about feeling stupid. So every situation I come up to, a new job interview, unless I'm able to flush that experience out and recognize where what shame message is what is coming out for me, I'm going to show up to the job interview feeling stupid and assuming that I'm stupid, right? So I've already disqualified myself because I've got this shame message recycling into other areas of my life, right? So if you take any painful experience that's creating reactivity, or you're feeling anxious or defensive, or you are feeling isolative or dissociating because you don't know how to engage something and you shut down, right? There's a root there of some shame, right? Shame messages always show up in I am statements. You guys are gonna have to help me with some of this. I'm stupid, I'm incapable, I'm not good enough. Worthless, 100%, that's a huge one. Worthless, unlovable, not valuable, unworthy, oh, that one's a big one too. A problem, right. Lazy, too much. Misunderstood, too much, oh, I got that one, growing up all the time. Okay. How about a burden? I'm a burden, right, absolutely. So you guys know them because you're familiar with them, because everybody has them, right? What ends up happening, because Satan is lazy but also very smart, not lazy, we recycle these shame messages over and over again, and we end up picking up the same ones over and over and over and over again. I have found that people tend to have about 3 that loop. Mine are, I do a lot of trauma work. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Love you guys. No, it's I'm not good enough, I'm crazy, and I'm stupid. I can tell you exactly where those come from in my story, and I can tell you how they tried to insert themselves again in my story, but then I can also tell you how I took them on, and I believed them, and I kept applying those shame messages to my story. I'm not good enough, I'm crazy, and I'm stupid, right? So now, every time there is some type of inflammation in my system, I'm defensive, I feel irritated. I always get irritation in my jaw where I'm like trying to smile, but you feel that tension in your neck, right? Or you feel that chest tightness, you feel the kind of bubble gut people get when they get anxious. Your body is about to invite you to explore a shame message, okay? So if you happen to know what they are, because you've been able to kind of trace some of that history back to the root cause of what's going on, the leak in the system, you can go, oh, okay, I know what's happening here, right? Not being good enough and being stupid hits home at work for me, right? I know I'm capable. All the evidence says that I'm a good therapist for the most part, but the second my boss calls, I got that shame message that decides to be like, hey girl, you're not good enough. He's about to tell you that, right? And if I don't know that, I'm gonna start getting defensive. My defense mechanisms are avoidance. I don't know what you're talking about, right? They're gonna be making excuses. I've just been really busy. I know that I'm supposed to do that. I just couldn't because I have all these other things going on, right? What are some of the other types of defense mechanisms? Excuses, avoidance, denial. I don't know. Nope, that didn't happen. Sarcasm? Yes, that is not me at all. Projecting? Yes, right. All the things that you're like, this doesn't feel right, and it's not aligning with what my experience is right now, but it's happening and I can't stop it, right? If you can recognize what your typical defense mechanisms are, everyone's gonna have kind of their set. You can start tracing back, ooh, I got a feeling of not being good enough and feeling dumb, not feeling worthy, feeling like a burden coming up right now. Hold on, let me address what's true, right? But if we don't know how to walk through that process, we're always going to be chasing the avoidance, we're gonna be chasing the defense mechanism, and then we're gonna have to be restoring relationship all the time. And it's awful, right? I don't wanna be in conflict with people. It's uncomfortable, my stomach hurts, I don't like it, I can't sleep at night, I wake up thinking about it. So if I can walk through what's happening in this moment, why am I what is that shame message that's coming up for me? We have the ability to actually be like, okay, hold on a second. Is my boss calling me actually a situation in which he's gonna say, Talia, you're not good enough, or he's gonna be saying that? Chances are very low. I could have done something that might not have been okay. I might need some feedback about something that wasn't great, but the idea that I am not good enough really doesn't add up in this moment. So if I act like it, I recycle the same shame message over again, and then I'm stuck, right? So if I've got the ability to know what's happening in my body, ooh, something's coming up, and I can recognize where one of these shame messages might be coming up, I can then kind of get ahead of the defensiveness, which removes me from relationship. I'm gonna start avoiding my boss's phone calls because I think that he's going to tell me something that I don't wanna hear. Then I remove myself from good connection with people that actually have nothing to say to me that's bad, right? But I don't know that because I can't withstand the feeling of shame that's coming up because I don't even know how to identify it. Does that make sense? That process make sense? So give me an example of a trauma, just basic trauma, maybe like a little t trauma, and we're gonna walk through the shame process. I wanna show you. Little one. Say that? Oh, that's a big one. Little one, okay. All right. So if somebody breaks up with you, I'm guessing they broke up with you, give me some of the shame messages that you might feel in that moment. Unworthy. What else? Ugly. Unlovable. Oh, these are terrible, right? Thanks, Satan. No. Not good enough. Right. Okay. So say that again?
All the body image things.
All the body image things. My body's not okay. I'm not good enough. I'm less than somebody else, right? Like, I am not enough in general, kind of thing.
How long did they know that?
How long did they know that?
That they wanted to break up with you? That would be in my mind.
Okay, so the shame message there would be, how long did they know that? The shame message that gets inflicted is I'm stupid.
Yeah.
I missed something. What does it say about somebody if they miss something? They're dumb, right? So that's the reason why we get to the bottom of it. If I'm asking that question, what is it, and I ask my clients all the time, well, what does it say about you that happened? And I'm not looking for the logical answer because shame isn't logical. It doesn't work in the logic and what makes sense. It works in something much deeper that we don't know how to combat, which is why it lives on and on and on, and it gets recycled over and over and over again, right? And eventually, so the enemy starts inviting us to feel these things, then he doesn't have to invite us anymore because we're like, oh, I'm unlovable, let's go. And we go through the rest of our life feeling unlovable, right? And we gotta check somewhere being like, wait, when did I start agreeing to this? Not only just wearing it, but then agreeing to it. And belief creates its own proof, right? So if I believe I'm unlovable for long enough, I will create situations in which I am unlovable. And then we got a whole other thing happening, right? And so we gotta be able to determine, what am I doing to contribute to this shame message being true in my life? Who contributed to this shame message being true in my life? What situations contributed to the shame message being true in my life? Hold on a second, and do I agree with it? Most of the time, you can go back to the word where it's like, you were wonderfully made, period. And that should cast out every single shame message, but does it work? No, right? So we have to go through the process of breaking it down every single time something's happening. You guys are in a conflict, somebody stole something from the bathroom, your hairbrush is missing, right? Someone's been rummaging through your stuff. What do you feel? Angry, violated, frustrated, helpless, disrespected, right? Okay, so what does it say about somebody who is disrespected? Weak, not valuable. So we got a hairbrush that was missing, and all of a sudden I'm believing the lie that I'm not valuable. How does that connect? It doesn't, but it does, right? You know it does. You're like, oh, this is my life. And I'm like, but when you break it down that way, you're like, How does a hairbrush go missing mean that I am not valuable, that I'm weak? But when you think about it, you break it down, you're like, that's stupid. I'm not gonna believe that anymore. So when you get reactive, you can go, hey, there's been an offense. Somebody stole something of mine. I don't like that. I do feel violated. That's not respectful. But it is not connected to my personhood. Does that make sense? So this is why it's important to go through that process and be like, what is happening in my body? I'm feeling very revenge-driven right now, right? You know when you've got that feeling. When you feel anger, where does it come up for y'all? In your body. Chest, right? Where else? Ears get red. I hear that all the time. I'm like, what's up with the ears? They know. Tongue, the mouth. Jaw. Me too, girl. Say that again. Neck. Eyes. Feel it. Where else? Hands. Stomach. Right. Absolutely. What about anxiety? Throat. Stomach. All the time. Chest. Right. Shoulders. Back. Did you know that you have more neuron receptors that pick up emotions and feelings and the chemicals that go with that in your stomach than you do your brain? Like an amazing amount more. Your stomach picks up on emotional regulation or dysregulation a gajillion times faster. That was science, by the way. A gajillion times faster. I will quote nothing because I'm just making up numbers, but no, it's true. I'm not going to say something that's not true. But it is so much faster. So when your stomach is going, y'all need to trust it. Something's happening, right? Now, it could be old. It could be an old feeling that you're having, and it could be from childhood. It could be from a couple weeks ago. But it's a shame message of being like, oh, hey, I'm here, girl. And I'm going to confuse you. I'm going to make you real defensive. And we're not going to deal with this, but you're just going to feel terrible in your stomach and go to the bathroom a whole bunch, right? Okay, so anger in the face. What about like conflict? When you feel conflict come up, you watch somebody about to throw down. You feel like you're about to get in trouble. The heart beating. Yeah. The heart's beating, right? What else? I get tingly. My hands get tingly. Like I want to run away. Everything goes in slow motion, right? Yo, that's your body preparing for a threat, right? But then we don't want to be like that, so we're like, I'm fine. Or maybe somebody in your life was like, this is not that big of a deal, you're fine. You're like, I don't feel fine. Everything in my body is telling me I'm not fine, right? Family systems that don't know how to deal with emotions, even the basic ones, are like, I'll give you something to cry about. Well, I'm already crying, and no one's helping me, so thank you. That doesn't help at all, right? So it is really, really important. I say all of this because it's really, really important to make sure that you understand how to figure out what's going on in your body. And it takes practice, right? So the next time you're feeling something or you're noticing something, I want you to be like, oh, Talia, that weird therapist was talking about how to notice what's happening in my body, and just stop. I don't know what's going on. I think it's tension. I think it's feelings of fear. Where am I noticing it? My chest, my stomach, my back, my throat's closing up. I don't feel like I can talk, right? Feeling it in my hands, something. Okay, this body reaction I'm having right now is about fear. It's about conflict. Okay, good to know. If your body's going to tell you fast what's happening and your brain doesn't really need to be involved, it's easier to be like, oh, I got fear coming up. I don't know where it's coming, but I'm sensing it, right? It's basically like we're walking down the road and there's a cottonmouth, which is venomous, and going, oh, stop walking. That's a snake, and it's really venomous, and it could put you in the hospital. Oh. We don't react that way. We go, stop, hey, hold on, right? That's how fast our body recognizes emotions. But then we deny it. We're like, I'm fine. And then we go fight with somebody, or we self-sabotage. Anybody have a history of self-sabotaging? Yeah, 100%. We sign up for things that we want to do. I'm going to run that 5K, and then we're like, I can't. We're like, wow, that was really good. Good, right? But we self-sabotage, we run away, we avoid. Who sleeps when they're stressed? Which is good. You can't sleep when you're stressed because you got to engage that feeling. We got to figure out what to do with it. We got to build our window of tolerance to understand uncomfortable feelings so that we can know what to do with it. Nobody in John 3:17 is feel these feelings and be tortured. Although it feels like that sometimes, right? No one's doing that. if you are being asked to stay in a feeling, it's because we need to understand that feeling and we need to understand the limits of it. We need to go, what is happening here? Do not run from these feelings that are coming up. If you don't know how to manage it, go to your journal and be like, I'm writing down that I don't know how to manage this. This is a lot. I feel overwhelmed. This is painful. I don't want to think about the things that are coming up when I sit in this place. The end by now I'm going to go walk around and pretend like this didn't happen. Fine, that's fine. Just engage the process a little bit, right? The more you practice it, the better you get at emotions, and then eventually you're like, something happens in your body and you're like, ooh, there's conflict. I feel conflict. What's happening here? What's going on? Let me take an account. Do I need to take ownership for anything? No, I don't think I did anything. Hold on, body, regulate. You're not in trouble. You're not stupid, Talia. You're not crazy. You're not good enough. Hold on. It gets fast. But it takes being willing to sit in those emotions and notice what's going on in your body first to be able to be like, oh, this isn't about me. This isn't about my personhood. This is, right. Does that make sense? Makes sense? Okay. Let me check my notes because I don't even know where I am. Well, okay. Yeah. Okay, so trauma work, people come to me for trauma work. They're like, I want to do trauma work. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Yes, you do. No, you don't. It's the best, worst thing that happens to you, right? Walking into the core of where our shame lives and trying to figure out what happened, right? And what's true and what's not true is where freedom comes from. That's where the Lord sits the most. And a lot of the modern day church doesn't understand this. They're like, if it's not good, it's not God yet. And I'm like, true, very true. The word says that. But we've mistaken the trench, that pit of pain, and we're like, oh, that is gross. Jesus doesn't like that. Let's step over it, right? And that's not where healing comes from. Healing comes from getting down in it and being like, what has happened? What happens? You cannot forgive anything unless you are able to take an account of what is owed, right? You cannot forgive a debt unless you're able to take an account of what is owed. I got a lot of student loans. School is expensive, and I didn't have the cash. So I got a lot of student loans, right? If someone came to me, I was like, Talia, we want to pay your student loans. I'm like, oh, Jesus, okay. Yes. They're going to go, here's a 20. And I'm going to go, oh, thank you. That is not enough, right? Not enough. If they're really going to pay it, they're going to go, hey, how much? Right? They're going to ask me the number. And I'm going to go, it's a lot. And here it is. And they're going to go, here it is, forgiven, right? The same process happens to us when we work through our trauma. People are like, I'm healed. It's fine. No problem. Jesus died on the cross. For me, I'm healed. That is true. But we have to understand what that means for us. We have to take an account of what was owed. What happened in our life? What's the shame that was carried that we are leaving at his feet? The concept of, yeah, I'm going to leave this at his feet makes sense. But how many times have you been like, but I'm going to pick that back up and put it in my fake Louis Vuitton and I'm going to keep on going, right? A million times right here. The only way to do that is to fully understand the weight that's being forgiven, right? So if you are able to sit with your story enough to go, what happened to me? What was painful about this experience? What did it leave me with, right? That's how you take an account of what was owed. Who might have I felt wronged by, right? Why was that painful? Because it left a shame message that said something negative about myself and I don't know how to carry it, right? Unless you guys come from engaged families, which I don't think you want, you did. There's a lot of avoidance in the parent households that you guys grew up in. A lot of stuff happened that nobody talked about. A lot of families don't even have the basic sex talks, right? Where'd you learn about intimacy? My mom threw me a book when I was 15. 15, that's too old, right? A book? Where are these conversations happening, even in the most basic ways? If they're not happening in the most basic ways, they sure are not happening in the heavy ways. Hey, what do we do when we're feeling shame? What do we do when we're not feeling good enough? What does the Lord say? This fly is about to be shamed, but okay. You know what I'm saying? So if you grew up in a household where no one was helping you with the narrative, what the enemy tries to do, right? We're not going to be able to combat it. So you end up here and you're like, nothing is working. I've tried everything. I've been in this cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I'm done and I can't figure it out. A lot of times it's because we have not gone through the process of being able to unlock what is being forgiven. So we keep picking it back up, right? That's how the enemy works. He recycles stuff. Eventually we recycle it on ourselves. So starting small, this is my challenge to you guys. Y'all journal? Is there a journal? Okay. I want you to start with 5 little T traumas, Don't get into the big crazy ones. You'll end up calling me in the midnight and be like, Talia, you messed us up. We're in our big trauma. And I'll be like, oh, sorry. No, don't do that. 5 traumas, right? Little things that were like, I don't love how that went. I want you to talk about what happened with your emotions. What did it feel like? And if you're like, I don't know, right? That's okay. If you watch somebody else experience that, what might it have felt like for them? If you watch your kid experience that, what do you think they would have felt? Sometimes it's hard to connect to our feelings on behalf of ourselves because no one told us that was okay. Or they told us we were wrong when we did that. Does that make sense? So if we don't know how to connect to our own feelings, I want you to ask, hey, if this happened to you, what do you think you would feel? I'd be angry. I'd feel betrayed. I'd feel unworthy. I'd feel really confused. Okay. Do we remember what it felt like in our body when that happened? Maybe not. Okay. What might have been the shame that was left? What is the shame that I might be carrying? Okay. Then you're like, okay, if I'm gonna work really hard to hide that shame, I don't want anyone to see it, what am I doing with my defensiveness? I grew up thinking I was stupid. I went to this school in California that was like a hippie school, and they didn't teach you how to read and write until a lot later because they were working on your emotional development and artwork, which was beautiful, but when you get transferred out of that type of school into a public school, it's real scary, okay? Got beat up. My school, I used to sing Kumbaya when people got hurt on the playground. It's like, oh, you got hurt. Literally, that's literally what happened. Then I go to this public school and they're like, move. And I'm like, you're rude. I'll sing for you. It's fine. So I don't know if y'all know this, but I was super behind when I got to this school. Nobody tried to put me in this situation on purpose. My dad's job got moved and I got moved around and I was lost. I remember being in that school and everything is so bright, it smells weird, it smells like glue and this lady's perfume. It was really strong, right? And I was overwhelmed and I didn't know what anybody was talking about. I wasn't allowed to watch Rugrats, right? Because Angelica was rude, and so I didn't know what that was, and I felt totally isolated. And I'm in these classes, I'm going through school, I'm getting tutored all the time. I don't know what's happening, I'm in 2nd grade. So right there, enemy's like, you're stupid. And I took it on, and I felt overwhelmed. And it wasn't anybody's fault that I felt that way, it's just what happened. Well, I take I'm stupid with me all the way through school. I'm a little ADD, so that was a hard thing, which validated the stupid thing, right? Didn't know that. It's compounding. Does this feel familiar to anybody? Yeah. Oh, sorry? Okay, yeah. So I get to high school, mom's like, we're just so proud of you, you're gonna go to college. I'm like, I'm telling you I'm going to college, but I'm not going to college. There's no way. There's no way. And I'm like, sure, I'm gonna go to A-State or UCA. I fully in my heart believed there's no way. I felt fraudulent, but I didn't want anyone to know that, right? And so instead of working really hard at school, because I couldn't do it, I felt stupid and it was hard for me. I hate school, hate it. It was not, I don't like it. I'd rather make baskets or talk to people. I hated school. But I didn't want people to know that because I didn't want people to think I was stupid, even though I felt stupid. So I got really good at other things, dance team.